the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. So we welcome all devotees today to the Sunday program, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We will chant texts 47 and 48. Tadhyano driktaya bhaktya Vishuddha dishana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekanta matayogatim Avapur duravapamte Asadbir vishayatmabhihi Vidhuta kalmashastanam Virajyanadmanaivahi Tadhyano driktaya bhaktya Vishuddha dishana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekanta matayogate Avapur duravapamte Asadbir vishayatmabhihi Vidhuta kalmashastanam Virajyanadmanaivahi Tadhyano driktaya bhaktya Vishuddha dishana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekanta matayogatim Avapur duravapamte Asadbir vishayatmabhihi Vidhuta kalmashastanam Virajyanadmanaivahi. Would anyone like to chant? Please read the synonyms. Tat, that. Dhyana, positive meditation. Utriktaya, being freed from. Bhaktya, by a devotional attitude. Vishuddha, purified. Dishanaha, by intelligence. Pare, unto the transcendence. Tasmin, in that. Narayana, the personality of Godhead. Sri Krishna, Pade, unto the lotus feet. Ekanta Matayaha, of those who are fixed in the Supreme, who is one. Gatim, destination. Avapuhu, attained. Duravapam, very difficult to obtain. Te, by them. Asadbihi, by the materialists. Vishaya Atmabihi, absorbed in material needs. Vidhuta, washed off. Kalmashaha, material contaminations. Stanam, abode. Virajena, without material passion. Atmana eva, by the self-same body. He, certainly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attain the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attain that abode in their very same bodies. Please hear the purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami, in his Hari Bhakti Vilas, says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahmana by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without change of body. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he, used in this connection, positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about this factual position. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also affirms the statement of Srila Jiva Goswami, when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically, without deviation, can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of the three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, without change of body, as we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to His abode without a change of body. Jai Shla Prabhupada, Transcendental Purports Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Utapada Kamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripaha Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse continues from yesterday, where we discussed how the brothers of Yudhishthira Maharaj, the remaining Pandavas, when they saw that Yudhishthira Maharaj had decided to become detached and renounce from this material world, they also decided to follow him. And this is the way of our movement, that we follow in the footsteps of the great advanced devotees. We don't imitate them, but we follow them. In this verse now, we come to understand what is the consciousness and the attitude of the Pandavas. It is not easy for us to detach and renounce from things around us. The tendency for us to do that very often is on a very artificial level or on a very superficial level. But you can find in the pages of Bhagavatam that for us to have genuine renunciation, for us to become genuinely detached, there must be certain qualities that are cultivated in a devotee. Over here, you find that the prime criteria of a devotee like the Pandavas, who actually decided that they wanted to go back to Krishna and who qualified for that, starts actually by this idea that they meditated on the lotus feet of the Lord without interruption. This is very important. If you look at the verse before, it is stated there, therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. So this is a very important point that is given here. Because what happens is, we don't realize that in our lives, the more interruptions we have in devotional service, the more difficult it is for us to actually remember Krishna and to be absorbed in his devotional service. In order to minimize interruptions, Bhagavatam also tells us that the only way in which we can stop the interruptions in our devotional service is actually to make sure that our motivation when we approach Krishna is actually correct. If our motivation is materially inclined, then our devotional service will become interrupted. This is given on the basis of that famous verse, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yathor Bhaktir Adok Saje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. If we want ourselves to become satisfied, then the devotional service that we perform to Krishna cannot be motivated. To the extent that it becomes materially motivated, to that extent it becomes interrupted. And the more interrupted our devotional service is, the less satisfied we are in ourselves. So actually it is not very difficult for us to introspect on our own devotional progress. Sometimes when we come to devotional service, in the beginning we are very enthusiastic and our motives are very pure. But sometimes after a while, even though we may have given up grosser forms of attachments to the material world, other subtler forms sometimes take over. Like we said yesterday, there is pride, there is lust, there is anger, there is the quest for name and fame. And all these things put together, they accumulate as dust. And instead of giving a clean mirror between us and Krishna, it becomes an interrupted scene. Why? Because we may have come to the temple initially only to please Krishna. But after a while, we come to the temple to please ourselves. And then what happens is, what we do in the temple becomes more important than what Krishna wants from us. And that is how we become sometimes dissatisfied. We find fault, we criticize, and then we think that because of everybody else and everyone else, we are becoming distracted. So it's very important for us. So actually, Krishna is very kind. Because when you read this Bhagavatam, you will find that Krishna says, in this verse, Shukadeva Goswami is describing the wonderful activities of the Pandavas. And he says here that pure consciousness, by meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord without interruption, the Pandavas developed pure consciousness. We are in the business of developing consciousness for Krishna. That is why we are known as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. But here, in many pages of Bhagavatam, Prabhupada actually pushes us to the point that we should be aiming for pure consciousness. And in this verse, pure consciousness means that they, the Pandavas, were not absorbed in the material conception of life. Very clearly it is stated. So in other words, the moment we start becoming absorbed in the material conception of life, at that point of time, we become disturbed in our minds. So every time our minds become disturbed, it is a very clear sign that it's not anyone's fault that our minds are becoming disturbed. It's actually the fact that somewhere in our devotional service, we have become absorbed in the material conception of life. In the name of devotional service, we are actually becoming attached subtly to matter. This is a very important point. You have heard, isn't it, this story that Prabhupada used to say to read the Gita. You have this Brahmana, who took initiation from his spiritual master. And spiritual master's instruction to him was, whatever happens, you sit under this tree and create an environment in such a way that you will always read the Gita. So he sat down to read the Gita in very simple conditions. But what happens is, he had only 2 pairs of dhoti, and they were very simple. So one day what happened was he put 1 pair out for washing, and when he came back, he found that the rats had eaten into it. So he was thinking, if the rats keep eating in, then I can't sit down peacefully to read the Gita. So I must get a cat. So he got the cat to make sure that the rat is taken care of. And if the rat is taken care of, then he's peaceful because his dhoti is clean and he can sit down and read the Gita. But the cat requires maintenance. So cat began to meow and meow because there was no milk for it. So then he decided, okay, to take care of the cat, which will take care of the rat, so that I can then sit down with my dhoti and read the Gita, I will then go and find a cow. So he went to get a cow, and the cow had milk, and the milk took care of the cat took care of the rat, and he thought that he could sit down and read the Gita. And then what happened? The cow, it's not easy to maintain cows. If anyone has had any chance of taking care of cow, it's serious business, right? It's not easy. So the cow needed maintenance, and he thought, I don't have time to take care of the cow because I need to sit down and read the Gita. So he thought, I should have someone like a companion who will take care of all these things. So let me find a wife. So what he does is he finds a wife. This should never be the reason why we have a wife, by the way. But for him, it was the reason, So he found a wife, and she sat down, and she took care of the cow took care of the cat took care of the rat, and he thought he could peacefully sit down to read the Gita. But then the wife told him, when you were a bachelor, you could live under a tree, that's all right. But when we come together, we will have children, we need to maintain the children, you need to go out there and get some income, we need to build a house, you need to find some food. So the Brahmana thought, if I take care of all this, the good wife is satisfied, then the cow is taken care of, the cat is taken care of, the rat is taken care of, and then I can sit and read the Gita. So then he thought he will start building a house, he had a nice farm, and 1 year passed just taking care of all this so that he can sit down to read the Gita. And in the end, the sadhu comes back after a year, thinking his disciple must have finished the whole Gita, 1 year is more than sufficient time. He must be sitting under a tree being very simple. He walked in and he thought he went into a wrong corner of the village because there was a house, there were children running around, there was a child at least running around, and there was a wife. And so he turned to the disciple and said, what happened? I thought you were going to read the Gita. And he said, my dear Guru Maharaj, I did all this so that I can read the Gita. And Guru Maharaj asked him, did you read the Gita? He said, no, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to start. And in this way, our mind is so powerful that just before we can actually go into the essence of devotional service, it finds all the favorable arguments why everything has to be properly set before we can launch ourselves into devotional service. But that day will never come because we are in the material world. So the Pandavas recognized that. They knew that they were in a world that would never be all right. When they were 13 years in exile, they were not wasting time. They were not saying, after exile, I'll remember Krishna. In all the periods of exile, they constantly remembered Krishna. When they came out of exile and they got the kingdom of Hastinapur and they ruled it, they did not forget even for a moment, even as they ruled, that who was the person responsible for them to be here. And again, with the same heightened sense of remembrance that they did in 13 years of exile, they continued remembering Krishna, even when they became Lord and Masters of Hastinapur. So when time came for them to leave, because Krishna had left this world, there was no hesitation on their part. Because Bhagavatam says, all throughout their lives, they didn't wait to read the Gita. They just started reading the Gita. So we cannot wait for the material conditions to become favorable so that we do devotional service and develop pure consciousness. There will never be a right time. So pure consciousness is developed when we come out of this material conception of life. When we plan so that we can do bhakti, that is material conception of life. So much planning until there's no bhakti is counterproductive. How much do we need to plan to start chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now that was unplanned, but it still works, doesn't it? It still works. So sometimes it's good to have a plan, but it's very important to understand that our plans are always superintended by Krishna's plans. In that way we become peaceful. So the Pandavas, they were completely out of material conception of life, which means that they were completely free from the modes of material nature. And how were they free from the material modes of nature? Because of this principle in 5th chapter, 10th verse of Bhagavad Gita. There Krishna very nicely tells Arjuna, Brahmani adhaya karmani. Adhaya means to resign. So Brahmani adhaya karmani, sangam tyaktva karotiva. Then Krishna says, Lipyate nasa papena padma patram ivam vasaha. The meaning is very nice. Krishna says, anyone who performs his duty without attachment. So this word adhaya means to resign. When we want to be renounced from our work, the mood in which we should do it is that this work should be done to the best of our ability for Krishna. But the moment we finish, we resign from the effects of the work. And that whatever that comes from the work is offered to Krishna. So one who performs his duty without becoming attached to it, then what happens? He surrenders the results of that work to the Lord. And when he does that, lipyate nasa papena, he is not affected by the sin that comes from any action. Just like a lotus flower that grows in muddy waters, somehow or another, the lotus flower actually doesn't grow in pristine waters. It grows in mangroves, it grows in swamps. And if you look at the lotus flower's beauty and you look at the place it is surrounded by, it appears contradictory. But the lotus flower is untouched. The other quality of the lotus flower is if you put a drop of water on the lotus flower, you find that the water doesn't stay. It will drop off from the flower. It doesn't touch. It's like a waterproof kind of flower. And this is how we should live in this world. This is how the Pandavas lived in this world. They were in this world, but they were not of this world. There is a difference. They moved around with everyone, but their minds and their consciousness was always with Krishna. That they never left. One time, Prabhupada, the devotees asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, we are moving around chanting Harinam, and we have to meet so many persons who are caught up in the material conception of life. So how are we going to come out of it? It's very difficult. We want to be with Krishna, but when we move around with people, it becomes very difficult because it's so easy to become influenced by them. And Prabhupada gave them this nice story. Prabhupada said one time, there was a monkey who stayed in a tree, and there was a crocodile who was waiting to eat the monkey. A particular delicacy for the crocodile was the heart of the monkey, right? The crocodile considered the heart of the monkey very delicious. So it was wondering, how can I catch this monkey so that I can eat its heart? Now the monkey needed to get to a middle of an island, an island in the middle of the ocean. And because on that island there were beautiful coconut trees and banana trees, and monkeys love bananas. So one day the monkey came down and it wanted to cross over when suddenly the crocodile came out. And when the crocodile came out, the monkey jumped hurriedly back to the tree. But the crocodile said, "My dear friend, today I have renounced all my attachment to eating you. I have become sadhu actually. And now because I am very sadhu in nature, I promise you that let us become friends. And I will not go after your heart, not literally, but as a friend, we will have a heart-to-heart relationship." So monkey thought, oh, this is a nice change, in crocodile. So the monkey said, "All right, crocodile, since we are friends, can you take me across to that island?" Crocodile said, "What are friends for?" So the monkey gets on top of the crocodile, and the crocodile goes into the water. Halfway through, the crocodile stops, and the monkey says, "Crocodile, we have to go a bit more because the island's a bit far." And the crocodile says, "Unfortunately, my friend, I've had a change of heart. And the real truth of the matter is, I love your heart. And not because you're my friend, but because I want to eat it. So this is the perfect place for me to stop, because now I'm going to chomp on you." And the monkey said, "Is that why you actually stopped in the middle of the ocean? You should have told me, my dear crocodile, that you wanted my heart." And the crocodile said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Don't you know anything about monkeys?" Crocodile said, "No, I thought I knew everything about monkeys." He said, "No, the monkey's special feature is that wherever they go, they always leave their hearts behind in the tree where they reside. They don't move around with their hearts, just in case they meet crocodiles like you." So then the crocodile thought, "Oh, okay, fine, I didn't know that." So the monkey said, "But because you have been so kind to me, why don't you turn back and bring me back to the tree? And I'll go up, I'll get my heart, and I'll give it to you." And the crocodile thought, "That's a nice friend, so let's turn back." And the crocodile goes back, brings the monkey back to the tree. Monkey climbs up. Crocodile says, "Where's your heart?" And the monkey says, "In a very safe place, but it's not with you." And Prabhupada said that this is how we should live in this world. We may move around everywhere. We may talk about Krishna to everyone, but our heart is always with Radha Gopinath. It should be very safe. It should not go anywhere else. And that is within our control if our spiritual practice is disciplined. If you read the purport, Prabhupada uses the word spiritual disciplinary actions. The word disciplinary normally refers to, I've done something wrong and I have to be disciplined, isn't it? So Srila Prabhupada is using that word not in accident. There's no purport and no word that Srila Prabhupada uses that is accidental. The word spiritual disciplinary action means that every time we perform devotional service, we should know that the second word to devotional service is discipline. Without discipline, no one can become a disciple. Prabhupada makes it very clear in one of his purports. If we want to have spiritual success, we must take shelter of the great Vaishnavas and our spiritual masters. And we cannot come out of material conception of life until we become disciplined in our consciousness to submit to the instructions of the spiritual master. And that is why in this purport, Prabhupada says, it doesn't matter where we have come from or what body we have. Spiritual life does not require material qualification. Prahlad Maharaj was born into demon family. Sudama was very, very poor. Gajendra was an elephant. Bali Maharaj was a demon. So we have all kinds of devotees in Bhagavatam. And yet every single devotee could transcend this material ocean of birth and death on account of their being submissive to the teachings of Krishna on the bona fide following of their spiritual masters. This is a very important point. And that is why, to come out of this, Krishna says very nicely in 14:26, and that is quoted in this purport. He says, Mam chayo avyabhicharena. Avyabhicharena in Sanskrit literally means to be chaste. Chastity is such an important concept, even in this material world. In other words, without deviation. In this material world, it becomes a virtue for a woman and a man to be chaste to each other in their marriage. But the origin of chastity is the spirit soul's chastity to the Supreme Lord Krishna. that we don't look here or there. The moment we deviate ourselves from being attentive to Krishna, we lose our attraction for Krishna. This is a very important point. And the Pandavas never deviated from their remembrance of Krishna. So automatically, without separate endeavor, they were always attracted to Krishna. You will notice that in any relationship in this material world, when you are attentive to the person, you become attracted to the person. If you're not attentive to that person, you lose attraction for the person. When you were studying in your school days, when you were attentive to a particular subject, you became attracted to it. If you just switched off when the teacher was talking and you had no attention, then you lost interest in the subject. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. We think that I don't like math because, you know why, I just don't like it. But if you look carefully, the reason why you don't like it is because you never paid attention to it. So attention leads to attraction. And this is amplified by Kunti Mata in her prayers. So it's very clear that the Pandavas were attentive. Mam chayo avyabhicharena, without deviation. And how, after being without deviation, how did they perform this devotional service? Bhakti yogena sevate. Not only did they perform devotional service, but it was on the platform of sevate, on service. Which is why we must have Bhagavatam in our right hand and we must have a broom in our left hand. Depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed, but have both. Because we need both to continue our devotional service. Someone who sits only to speak about Krishna and doesn't act on it, he is not devotee. And someone who only acts on it but cannot spread it to others, he is not complete in the way he performs devotional service. Both are needed, prachar and achar. They are needed. So a devotee who performs both, like the Pandavas, they always spoke about Krishna. The whole kingdom was Krishna conscious and they behaved like devotees. So those who do bhakti yogena sevate, what happens to them? Sa gunan samatityetan. They are able to transcend the material modes of material nature. And this is the most difficult thing for us to do. Very often, if our devotional service is interrupted, we become dragged into this material world. So we may be seated in the temple, but if the modes catch us because we are not remembering Krishna, some days we are sattvic, some days we are very passionate, some days we cannot wake up for Mangalarti, we are in ignorance. Some days we are all three also. Have you noticed that? Sometimes in the morning we are very sattvic. By afternoon we are very, passionate. And then by late afternoon we are very tired, so we become very, very tamasic. It can happen to all of us. And you'll notice when you're sattvic, your behavior with people are different. When you're passionate, your behavior is different. And when you're very ignorant, your behavior is different. But in all of this, it's very difficult to remember Krishna. That's why devotees say, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. To come to the platform of at least Brahman realization, a devotee must learn to cross these material modes of nature. And that's why Bhagavatam insists that the only way to come out of material conception of life is to keep drinking by oral reception this beautiful nectar of Bhagavatam. What is that verse? Pibantiye bhagavata atmana satam kathamritam shravana puteshu sambritam punantite vishaya vidushitashayam vrajanti tacharana saroruhantikam. I think it's in the second canto, second chapter, 36 or 37th verse. This is the verse that speaks about how to come out of material conception of life. And Bhagavatam tells us, those who drink through oral reception. Sometimes people say, how do you drink through the ears? But it can only be done by Bhagavatam. Only Bhagavatam is in liquid form. Everything else is not. You can drink Bhagavatam by hearing it. It's so nice, and that is real prasadam actually. Those who hear Bhagavatam continuously, they don't become hungry or thirsty. I'm not saying that after this you can't have prasadam, but you'll find that you can last longer without food if you stick to Bhagavatam actually. If you chant Krishna's names, you find that actually you're not very hungry or thirsty. This is the power of oral reception. A-U-R-A-L, not O-R-A-L, right? That's prasadam. But this is oral, hearing Bhagavatam. So those who drink this oral reception, they are filled with the nectarian message of Krishna. What happens to them? They purify the polluted aim of life. The polluted aim of life I enjoy separately from Krishna. The spiritual aim of life is Krishna's enjoyment is first. And whatever I can do to assist that enjoyment, then it becomes natural for me. It is not that Krishna, I must be satisfied first. Then on the sideline, once I'm satisfied, I will look to you. That is material conception of life. So whenever we come to see Radha Gopinath, our mood is not what Radha Gopinath should do for us, but our mood is what we should do for Radha Gopinath. That is really pure devotional service. Anything else becomes the material conception of life. And even in that way, though we are performing devotional service, Bhagavatam says it becomes mixed devotional service because there is some motive. Prabhupada writes in the purport to that verse, and that last part is very important. And by practicing Bhakti Yoga, you can repeat, and by practicing Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo-devotee. For such an impostor, there is no remedy for being freed from material entanglement. Very hard-hitting, powerful last 3 lines of the purport. Prabhupada makes it clear. Because sometimes we may say, Prabhupada, we're actually performing Bhakti Yoga, but material contamination is still there. So Prabhupada answers that in his purport. He says that if you claim you're performing Bhakti Yoga, and still there is material contamination, then you please accept that we are still not really devotees. Let's accept it. And let's be humble enough to admit it. And then let's turn to the Vaishnavas who are very inspiring. Let's take the dust of their lotus feet. We cannot chant the holy names until we admit and accept our own failings. That is the basis of humility. That is the basis of humility. Until we really become humble and say that I am really at fault. It is my fault that I am not advancing. Not this person, not that person, not this God brother or not that disciple. It is my fault. I am the one who is not advancing. That is why I am disturbed. When we come to that level, then we take the shelter of the devotees in the true sense of the word. Then for one who is humble, Krishna gives that person the strength to tolerate the onslaughts of material nature. Then Krishna gives that person the intelligence to offer respect with humility to everyone and not to expect that there must be honor for that person. In such a state of mind, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says one can constantly chant the holy names of the Lord. So therefore, devotional service is not just practicing sadhana. It must change our behavior and conduct. If the practicing of sadhana doesn't impact our behavior, that means material contamination is still there and we are still pseudo-devotees. And Prabhupada says when that happens, there is hardly any remedy to come out of this material entanglement. And that is why the Pandavas' nature was, they were 100% honest to Krishna. Honesty to Krishna is very important. Sudama came to see Krishna, but in his heart, he rejected the idea that he wanted to ask Krishna for something. He was very honest to see Krishna because he just wanted to see Krishna. Very simple. Gajendra, when he was caught by the clutches of the crocodile, he was very honest to admit that all his strength could not free him from the network of the crocodile. He was very honest to admit that he had no power despite being the king of the elephants. And on that strength of his honesty, what did he do? He then sought shelter of one who is Paramparayanam, one who is the source and the shelter of all shelters. That is why we just finished Janmashtami, but there is one prayer that the Devatas sing in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very important for us to remember because it encapsulates the mood of the Pandavas. Because not only were they out of the material contamination of life, but they were fully absorbed without deviation from remembering Krishna. What's that verse? Satyavratam, Satyaparam Trisatyam, Satyasya yonim nihitam cha satye, Satyasya satyam ritasatya netram, Satyatmakam Tvam Sharanam Prapannaha. This is in the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, 26th verse. When you have time, please read the translation. The translation is very nice. The Devatas say, "O my Lord, you never deviate from your vow. And that vow is always perfect and cannot be stopped." Krishna's vow is to protect his devotees' consciousness. And Krishna never deviates from his vow. And the devotees of the Lord, they also never deviate from their spiritual practice. And they never deviate from the instructions of their spiritual master. This is the success of a devotee. Prabhupada very often stated that his only reason for his success was that he was 100% engaged in following the instructions of his spiritual master. He never deviated. And the Pandavas were 100% fixed at the lotus feet of their spiritual master, Krishna. And they never deviated from his lotus feet. So that is the first prayer that they give. The second part of the prayer, they say, Krishna, you are present in 3 phases of material creation. You're present in creation, you're present in preservation, and you are present in destruction. Therefore, you are at every junction of creation. This is very important. We cannot divorce our material life from our spiritual life. It always catches us. For devotees, there's no such thing as my job is material and my coming to temple is spiritual. No. In fact, we must spiritualize even our activities wherever we are. We must perform the activities for the pleasure of Krishna. And when we do that, then our life becomes very clear. We are not devotees in this world and then not devotees in another world. We don't have what we call a dual kind of life. We are just one. Krishna is ekanta. So we also have to become ekanta. That is the significance of that. And then the Devatas say, unless one is completely truthful, chaste, avyabhicharena, one cannot achieve your favor. Why? Because you cannot be delivered to those who are hypocrites. That's the word that's used. Those who are duplicitous in behavior. I say one thing to Krishna, but I behave in a very funny way with the devotees. That is considered to be third-class devotees. We take so much care of the deities, but we forget that the deity is in the heart of the devotees. We exhibit anger, we criticize, we condemn them, we say they're not up to standard. But who are we to say these things? The Pandavas had no time to criticize devotees. In fact, if you read the whole of Mahabharata, the Pandavas never even criticized the Kauravas. Think carefully. They never criticized the Kauravas because they had no time. Their time was spent remembering Krishna. Jayanand Prabhu was a great disciple of Prabhupada. And when the devotees sometimes had issues amongst themselves and they would come to see him and they wanted to pull him into those issues, he would just tell them, I have no time, I'm building the Rath, so I don't have time for these things. 2 things you must have time for. You must have time to fall sick. If you don't have time, actually you don't fall sick. You must have a bit of spare time, and then you realize illness will catch you. If you're completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, illness stays away. The other thing that you must have time for is criticisms. If you fill your life with Krishna consciousness and activities, you have no time for criticism. And this is honest living. So honesty is not just about saying the truth. Honesty is also living in such a way that it will please Krishna. That is the meaning of it. And then the Devatas say, Krishna, you are equal to everyone, and your instructions are there for everyone to apply. You are the beginning of truth, you are the middle of truth, and you are the end of truth. And this is the greatness of Krishna. So the Pandavas, therefore, it was so easy for them not to be interrupted because they lived their life in such Krishna-conscious behavior. And that is why, by the time they were ready to leave this world, Bhagavatam tells us their bodies were so spiritualized, there was no need for them to encounter death. They were already liberated. They were already spiritualized. It was just now a formality for them to pass from this world to another world. This is the greatness of Krishna. Why? Because devotional service is our greatest transcendental opulence. What is that verse? Na karhinchin mat paraha shanta rupe Nang shanti no me nimishole dihedihi. Yeshamaham priya adma sutascha. Yeshamaham priya atma sutascha sakha guru suhridam daivamishtam. It is in the 3rd canto, 29th chapter, and I think it's the 38th verse, 329, 38 or 39. There, Kapila Dev tells Devahuti very nicely, my dear mother, the transcendental opulences of the devotees, Prabhupada translates that as devotional service. The devotional service of the devotees can never be destroyed by time or by any kind of weapon. Everything that we have will be destroyed. The Pandavas renounced everything because they knew they could not take anything with them. But they only took one asset with them. As they walked into the Himalayas, they only took Bhagavatam. And Bhagavatam meant that they took devotional service. It was their one spiritual asset. And Bhagavatam tells us, no amount of time in this world can destroy devotional service. That's why even if your devotional service stops at a certain point in this life, in next life you continue where you stopped. Therefore, time did not destroy the effects of your devotional service. And yet time destroys everything in this world. But it doesn't touch devotional service. Amazing. And of course, if time cannot touch devotional service, how can weapons touch devotional service? Weapons are destroyed by time itself. So weapons cannot touch devotional service. But how is this devotional service powerful? It is powerful because Yesham aham priya atma sutascha. The devotees of the Lord, they accept Him in the form of Father, in the form of spiritual master, in the form of preceptor, in the form of well-wisher, in the form of a friend. So we must accept Krishna into our lives. It's not enough that we just chant Krishna's names. But when we chant Krishna's names and then we forget Him, what is the point? We have to accept Him in our hearts. And acceptance will only come when we practice devotional service sincerely. This is a very important point. In Bhagavatam and in so many pages of devotional history, we find that there are devotees who, even though they were in difficulty, Krishna never let them down. If you read the purport to this verse, Prabhupada writes that there are deities in India that have actually come to a devotee's Shraddha ceremony. A devotee has died. No one is there to perform the death ceremony. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, the deity has actually come to perform the death ceremony for his own devotee. No one else had to come. The deity himself came. If you go to Dwarka Dham, there's a famous episode, recorded history of the first deity of Dwarkadish. The first deity of Dwarkadish was very, very, very powerful because he was Swayambhu. But there was a young girl who used to come to the temple. She was not of high parentage or anything. I think her name was Badana. Very famous. It's recorded in the history of Dwarka. And she was such a devotee of the Lord that one day when she went home, Dwarkadish was so happy with her that the deity walked away from Dwarkadish temple and walked back with her. And when the deity walked back with her, the temple priest panicked. Because imagine if every devotee comes and Radha Gopinath goes back with them. You'd have a problem in your hands, isn't it? So they became very scared. And they prayed to Dwarkadish, please come back. And they caught this Badana. And they refused to believe her when she said that I did not steal the deity. They thought she had stolen the deity. But she said, I did not steal. The deity came on his own. It was voluntary. What can I do? Krishna wants to come. So what they did was, they said, if what you say is true, then we will put the deity of Dwarkadish on one end of the scale, and then you put something that belongs to you on the other end of the scale. And if Dwarkadish is really your Lord, then the scale will balance or it should go up. So Badana was very poor. She had nothing on her except one nose stud. So she took the nose stud, remembered Dwarkadish, and put it on the scale. And the moment she did that, the stud went all the way down and Dwarkadish went all the way up. And then the temple priest became very satisfied and Badana took Dwarkadish away. The temple priest prayed very hard and Dwarkadish manifested his second form in the temple. And if you go to Dwarka Dham, the deity form you see today is the second version of Dwarkadish. Because the first version of the Lord decided to go with his devotee. So this is how when we have the transcendental opulence of devotional service like the Pandavas did, it was not difficult for them to therefore always remain absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And that is what we should do. But one last point is important, because Prabhupada mentions in the middle of the purport that in order for us to advance to this freedom of the material conception of life, we should be engaged and guided by the spiritual master, because otherwise we cannot come out of these material modes of nature. And if you have time, look at the verse from the 7th canto, 15th chapter, 25th verse. Easy to remember. 7, 15, 25. There, Yudhishthir Maharaj is getting perfect instructions from Narada Muni. And he says, Rajas tamascha satvena, satvam chopashamena sa, etat sarvam gurau bhaktya, purusho hi anjasa jayet. The translation is very nice. One must conquer the mode of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. We know that. That's how you move from one mode to the other. And then one must become detached from the mode of from the mode of goodness and promote oneself to the mode of Vishuddha Sattva. That is also stated. But now, Narada Muni gives us a beautiful point. He says, all this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. In this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of material nature. So this is how, if we really serve our spiritual masters with faith and devotion, if we follow their instructions, because their plans are non-different from the plans of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then, Krishna willing, we will come out of the material conception of life, and we will perform devotional service in the form of ahaituki apratihata. This is the way, this is the royal road to devotional service. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Kori Vaishnavrinda ki. Are there any questions? I know we have to finish by 8:50, so you have some maha cleaning or something today. So perhaps if there's no time, then I won't take questions, but if you have a quick question, I may have a quick answer. Yes?
It says in the report and in the verse about the Pandavas going back to God in their same body. So how is that possible?
Okay. It is possible because in the course of their entire life, they completely spiritualized all their activities such that the body that they possessed, which should normally be materially inclined, by the grace of Krishna, it became an entirely spiritual being. And Prabhupada quotes Sri Jiva Goswami to endorse the same point, that when the Vaishnavas attain a state of devotional service, the likes of which the Pandavas had, by Krishna's mercy, they can actually enter into Golok Vrindavan in the very same body that they were given first. It shows you, it's a great indication of how spiritual they have been throughout their lives. And this cannot happen to most devotees because the Pandavas are in an exalted range of pure devotees. But it shows us that pure devotional service is so powerful that even the ravages of material nature cannot affect the body of a devotee if it becomes spiritualized. I hope that helps, Mataji. Thank you. It's a good question. Good question. Our aim is not really that we enter into Golok Vrindavan, whether in this body or another body. Our aim is that while we are here, we should pray very hard to be Krishna conscious, and then leave it to Krishna, because he's Yogeshwar, master of mystics. If he wants, he can allow you to enter with the body. Without body is also all right. As long as we have some service, I think we are very happy with Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki.